Hi, I'm Gail Sokol, and on today's show, we'll be creating the flakiest croissant.
Welcome to Baking Radio. Learn the art and science of baking with author, educator, and award-winning chef, Gail Sokol. Whether you've been baking your whole life or you're brand new to the world of baking and you're looking to build your confidence and learn new skills in the kitchen, you're in the right place. This is Baking Radio.
On today's show, we will talk about how to create the flakiest croissant. Okay, come on, say it with me, croissant. If you're listening to this in the car, yell it, scream it, croissant. It makes you feel French, croissant. I love saying that. It just, you get into the mood and you know you're not talking about a crescent roll, right? You're talking about a laminated dough. I discussed laminated doughs in season 1. Laminated doughs are a specialty type of dough that include Danish pastry, croissant, and puff pastry. Now, let's review what laminated doughs are before we talk about just croissant and how to create the flakiest ones. Just a little review. Laminated doughs are used to make some of the baking world's richest and flakiest pastries ever. They may also be referred to as rolled-in doughs or layered doughs. All three types of laminated doughs, Danish, croissant, and puff pastry, begin with a base dough. But only Danish and croissant dough begin with a yeasted base dough. Then a solid fat, usually butter or shortening, is encased within the base dough using a series of folds and turns. The turns and folds create hundreds, I'm not exaggerating here, folks, hundreds of layers of fat and dough that when baked separate. The dough actually separates, the layers separate, creating incredible flakiness. So I urge you to listen to season 1's podcast, Laminated Doughs, if you haven't already. Let's zero in on the subject of croissant. If you have never made a croissant, you simply must make them sometime. No exaggeration. You will feel like you just created the most extraordinary baked good in the entire world, and you were the first to do it. I know I say that about a lot of baked goods, but really, we're talking about croissant. Making croissant gives you the best baking high I have ever felt in my life, and it lasted for days, as long as the croissant lasted. When you see them coming out of the oven and you break into your first croissant, you will smile. A big smile, because that is what making croissant does to someone. It just makes you happy. Honestly, just try making them and you will see for yourself. I'm not exaggerating one bit. Croissants begin with a yeasted dough. Then a solid fat, like butter or shortening, is incorporated into that dough with a series of folds and turns, like I said before. The way I like to get my solid fat ready is to flatten it between 2 sheets of plastic wrap and place it on top of the rolled out yeast dough. And you obviously pull off the plastic wrap. The dough is then folded over the butter to encase it. Then the dough in the fat sandwich, like I like to refer to it, is rolled out and refolded 3 times, and you rest it in between each fold, usually by putting it in the fridge, to create many layers of dough, fat, dough, fat, dough, fat, hundreds of times. And every time you make a fold and you roll it out and make another fold, the layers go up exponentially. After the final 3rd rolling and folding session, the dough is rested in the fridge to relax any gluten that formed during the shaping process. And you want to finally have an easier time shaping that much beloved quintessential croissant shape. So you do have to let it rest. There is a little geometry involved in the shaping of the traditional croissant shape. For years, I had been making my croissant in a right triangular shape. Before I rolled the dough up, curved the edges to look like a crescent. And after some research on the subject, I learned I wasn't doing it right. I learned that a true all butter croissant is straight. Did you hear me? It's straight. It's not curved. it's actually not curved. And a croissant, using another type of fat, shortening, I don't use shortening, but a lot of bakers do and a lot of bake shops do. When they roll them out, they curve them at the edges. Such snobbery, I thought. The butter croissant versus the shortening croissant. Excuse me. So I decided, all right, I'm going to try to make my all butter croissant, and that is my fat of choice, always, for the flavor, because butter imparts that incredible flavor. But I decided to make my all butter croissant straight, no curved edges. Could I do it? Well, I was going to find out. I also decided to shape my croissant using a different shaped triangle, an isosceles triangle. Ho, ho, ho. If you recall from your geometry days, that is the triangle that has two sides that are the exact same length. And I make my isosceles triangles tall and skinny. So when I cut my dough and rolled the croissant up to shape them, I realized how many more layers of spiraling I got just by changing the shape of my triangles. Who would have thought? Whoever they are, they're right. And when they baked, oh my, what a puffy croissant I created, loaded with tons of flakiness. When I bit into one of my warm croissants, the moaning sounds I made, oh my gosh, they were just outright embarrassing. They were embarrassing. It's really good I was alone. I was so impressed with what I had made. When I bit into my warm croissant, flaky pieces of pastry were flying everywhere, and the inside was so buttery and tender, well worth the change in triangle shape. And you know, when you cut dough bits with a pizza wheel, when shaping croissant dough into triangles, sometimes there are little bits of excess dough that you need to cut off. Well, you can bake those scraps, or do what the great cookbook author and foodie Dory Greenspan does. She just gently shoves those little bits of scrap dough, she shoves them right into the triangles as she's rolling them up. You know what it does? It not only does it not waste the scraps, but it creates larger, puffier croissants at the same time. A twofer, if I ever heard one. If you too want to make spectacular croissant, get my recipe from my website, chefgailsokol.com. You can also watch exactly how I make them on a video on my YouTube channel. I hope you try my croissant because you will not be disappointed. On my next show, we're going to be discussing eating the curds. Thanks so much for listening. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, my YouTube channel, and my website, chefgailsokol.com.